In today's video, I'm going to give you 5 tips on how to lose weight with intermittent fasting using a 16-8 window. I've lost 80 pounds with intermittent fasting, and really I noticed results once I got to a 16-8. So first, let's define what a 16-8 is. It simply means that you are fasting, so you're not eating, for 16 hours. And then you have an 8-hour eating window. And so that 8-hour window is the time where you'll eat all of your food, and then you'll start fasting again after that 8 hours is over, and so on and so forth. So for example, if you ate your last food at 8 p.m. one night, then you wouldn't eat until 12 p.m. because 16 hours would have passed, and then it would be time to eat again. I think the biggest advantage of a 16-8 is it interrupts your life the least out of all the intermittent fasting plans. Because, with the 16-8, that basically means that you can have lunch at a normal time. You don't eat breakfast, you just have lunch at a normal time, and then you have a regular supper time, and then you just cut off your eating at a certain time each night, basically. Whereas with longer fasts, it can start to kind of feel like a little bit restrictive, or maybe like your day is just kind of getting weird because you're not eating breakfast, then you're not even eating lunch, and maybe you're having a really late lunch. Another big advantage is that some people just don't really do well with anything longer than a 16-hour fast. When you start to go to those longer fasts, there are a certain subset of people that tend to have negative effects, like they start to get headaches or nausea, or they just feel lethargic, or they have kind of like shaky legs and stuff when they get to that longer fast. So a 16-8, though, a lot of people can do it with very little perceived difficulty. It's a very individual thing. But of course, the real question is, how do you consistently lose weight with a 16-8? So the first tip I would have, and this was really helpful to me, was to think in terms of meals as opposed to grazing throughout the eating window. Some people, and I think this is the big misconception about intermittent fasting, is that they think when you say eating window, that means just eat during that entire time. And it's as if calories don't matter, but calories really do matter. The way intermittent fasting works is it just constricts the time that you have to eat your food in. So it makes overeating or eating too many calories more difficult. But that doesn't mean that you can't gain weight with a 16-8. You certainly can. If you just eat throughout the eating window, even if you're being very consistent with, I'm fasting for 16 hours, then I only eat during an 8-hour eating period, you can still definitely gain weight or fail to lose weight. My general strategy when I was trying to lose weight with a 16-8 was to eat enough at my first meal. So when my window opened up, I would eat my first meal, and I would try to eat enough so that I would feel full until my next meal. So in other words, when I eat lunch, I want to eat enough lunch so that I will feel full until supper. I didn't want to feel over full. I wanted to feel just the right amount of full. And it takes some practice to figure out that line where you are eating enough to tide you over until your next meal, but you're not eating so much that you're ending up, gaining weight. And on the other hand, you're not eating too little so that you're feeling really hungry until your next meal. Tip number 2 is to eat what you like during the eating window. There's this kind of misconception about intermittent fasting that you need to then combine intermittent fasting with some sort of eating style, like you need to be keto or something like that. And that's just not true. You can lose weight eating the foods that you like. And it's really helpful if you just let yourself eat the foods that you like, because for one, then you're going to enjoy your eating window. It makes it easier to stick with your fasting window. And no matter, what context you're in, like if you're at a party and there's cake and things like that, you can just eat it and you don't have to worry about being on plan because all the food's on plan. Tip number 3 is to keep your windows at the same time each day. So some people will do this a little differently. What they'll do is they'll recalculate their window based on the last bite of food that they had at a certain time. So for example, if they ate their last food at say 6:23, they would, start like a timer and say, okay, 16 hours from now, that's when I can eat my next food. But what I like to do instead was just to pick a time and stick with that on a daily basis. So in other words, I eat between the hours of 12 and 8 p.m. every day. And in that way, I always knew, am I in my fasting window? Am I in my eating window? And it was just easier. And by the way, that's just a totally random time. You can pick, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. or, 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. It really doesn't matter. The main thing to remember is that you want to have a 16-hour fasting window and an 8-hour eating window. Tip number 4 is to learn how to be flexible with a 16/8. So one thing that can happen, even though it normally works really well in your life, is that sometimes it won't. Sometimes it might be that you have like an early lunch, like normally you eat between the hours of 12 and 8, and then you need to eat at 11 because something happened, or somebody wanted to go to lunch or something like that. And in those cases, you can, if you are trying to be too dogmatic with yourself, you can get all stressed out and get upset. But instead, it's a lot easier to just say, okay, today is going to be a 15-hour fast as opposed to a 16-hour fast, and it's no big deal. It is really important to be consistent with your fasting window, but it's also important to learn how to be flexible. And you have to learn how to just kind of balance that out. You can get to the point where you're being way too flexible and you're not even really ever fasting. But if you go too far the other way, it can just be too rigid and you can end up feeling kind of constricted and suffocated by intermittent fasting. And that's not good either. And it might go the other way too. It might be that, you opened your window at, that certain time you always do, but then eating a little bit later is going to be necessary for whatever reason. And again, if you just let yourself learn how to do that. So in other words, always focus on what your goal is. Your goal isn't necessarily to have a 16-hour fast. Your goal in this case is to lose weight. So as long as you're losing weight, then there's really nothing to worry about. And tip number 5 is to resist the temptation to push your fasting window out longer than a 16/8 to try to hasten results. Now, this is something that I thought would happen. When I was at a 16/8, I was thinking, I feel like I could push it out a little bit further. And I thought, that'll be great because then I'll have faster results. But what I found for myself was when I did a 16/8, I lost about a pound a week. When I pushed it to an 18/6, I lost about a pound a week. And I pushed it all the way to OMAD, 1 meal a day, and still I lost about a pound a week. Now for myself, I ended up really enjoying OMAD. My body does well with it. I enjoy it just for the amount of free time that I found when I practiced that. But you may not, you may not really feel good at all on anything longer than a 16-hour fast. And that's okay. It's really important to pay attention to your own body and to your own life. You certainly don't want to ever feel resentful of your plan. So especially when you're watching videos about intermittent fasting, you can sometimes start to put pressure on yourself like, oh, this person's doing an 18/6 and they say that you'll have much better results if you do this. That's not necessarily true. It's a very individual thing. So just pay attention to your life and your results. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful. And if you'd like more information about intermittent fasting, you can check out my book, The Laid Back Guide to Intermittent Fasting. That's available on Amazon as a paperback, an ebook, or as an audiobook read by me. The links are in the description.